Megiddo has several Old Testament encounters from Conquest up through the Kings, and running through my head of everything else that we're doing. Yeah, is that good enough?
That's
Okay,
it,
great.
that's it.
All right.
So originally, I had seen that you had the itinerary.
Yep.
Do you have one where you have the updated dates?
It should be
Or is it the
updated
same
online
thing?
now.
Is it?
It should be updated online now, yes. So,
Okay.
yeah, essentially we will, work our way up the coast the first full day. And we'll see Caesarea, Mount Carmel, Megiddo, Jaffa, all those kind of lovely places. And then we'll make our way into, the Galilee, we'll go up to the Golan Heights, down to the Dead Sea, wrap up in Jerusalem. So basically, you kind of make a big loop, finishing with Jerusalem as the exclamation point of the trip, so.
Jared, where would you find that itinerary at?
Online, yep, on the,
She can print some off.
Mission Valley Travel, yeah, it should be there. on the
I'll
website.
find it through the email.
Yep.
MBTI.com.
Yeah, Bruce.
What is David's last name, or guy?
Oh, yeah.
And what is his last name?
It's Westland,
Westland.
yep, Westlund. At our last meeting in March, one of the things I'll have us do is download a app called WhatsApp, that perhaps some of you have. It's much more common than it was a few years ago. And what we'll do is we'll have a WhatsApp group for our trip, and that will allow David and myself to communicate to us during the trip. Say there's, here's your reminder in the evening that the bus is departing at this time in the morning, that kind of stuff. And then also it makes an easy avenue for if you're taking pictures and someone goes, hey, will you share that with the group? Yeah, I'll just put it there, and then it's available for everybody. So we'll have that where you can get into it in March. So, other questions? Yeah.
I have a lot of shirts that have American flag on it. Is that something you should wear over there?
I saw somebody wearing a cowboy hat, cowboy boots, cowboy shirt that lit up with his girlfriend who also had a cowboy hat and cowboy boots. Very too short of shorts for the Muslim quarter, walking down the Via Dolorosa, like, hey, look at us! And they were fine, so I think you'll probably be okay.
And they didn't have a target?
I mean, it doesn't get much more than that. I mean, it was really, I was just like, I've seen a lot of things, and that's pretty shocking even for me. So, yeah, I think you'll be fine. Yeah, I think you'll be
A lot
okay.
of his is just
Just
like
one
the
of these
patch
like
on
the
the
sleeves.
arm.
Yeah, I mean, you're American, people are used to
I
it,
don't know American.
Yeah. They'll pick you out of the crowd pretty quickly, so. Yeah, as long as it doesn't have, ISIS or something like that, you're probably okay, yeah. So, there's some big fans of America and Israel, so, yeah, I think that should be okay.
But be sure to have something that has sleeves on it and something that covers your knees. First couple of days,
For the women.
for the women.
Yeah, you guys gotta wear shirts, okay?
So my sleeves, though, long sleeve or short?
Just, yeah, shoulders and knees is the modesty, yep, yeah.
Okay.
And we'll go
This
over
outfit
that
is one I'll probably wear.
at our packing session next month, so,
Okay.
good.
So we're gonna miss that one next time. We'll be on vacation.
Well, you'll have a lot more
So
fun.
we-
Yeah. Well, we will.
If you have a
we'll-
handout, could you send?
Yeah, I do have a handout, and we'll have a video recorded of it as well. And basically what we do is just necessary items, recommended items, and then kind of preference items. So things like headlamp, water shoes, those are important for Hezekiah's tunnel and for the Dead Sea. Not the headlamp so much, but the water shoes is very helpful because of rocky soil. So we talk about things like that, so, and then different types of medications to pack, things like that, so. And then chargers, adapters, curling irons, all those things that come up. I usually bring my wife to that one because, she's a woman and she packs differently than I do, and so it's very informative, so. You know,
It's a
hat.
nice change. It's a nice
sunglasses.
change too.
What's that?
It's a nice change too.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, yeah. A little relief. Before we spend 2 weeks together. All right, great.
Is Missy coming?
She's not. She is going to be teaching. So,
Oh.
yeah. She's been quite a bit. It's okay. She's got the.
I was looking forward to this one.
She's partied in Israel quite a bit. So, you guys ready? Anything else? Okay, Jerusalem. Today, yesterday, and forever. And so what I want to do, I'm teaching this on Jerusalem a little bit differently than I have in the past. In the past, I started all the way back at when it was Jebus, and then walked all the way forward, covering 4,000 years of history, and people tend to gloss over a little bit at that point. So what I want to do is I kind of want to walk into Jerusalem as you'll see it today, and then we'll kind of go through and around it, primarily focused in the area of the Old City, where we'll be staying, and where most of the sites are that we'll be focused on seeing. The time that we'll spend in the newer part of Jerusalem, or Western Jerusalem, will be when we're at Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum, and if you want to do a gelato run at night with me, so. Because gelato's really good. So, all right. So Jerusalem today, the whole city itself has about 1 million people. It's the capital of Jerusalem, of Israel. Most countries don't keep an embassy there. They keep a consulate, but they'll have an embassy in Tel Aviv. And so to the rest of the world, they recognize Tel Aviv as the capital of Israel, not Jerusalem. The reason for that is that because part of Jerusalem was under control of the Jordanians from 1948 at the War of Independence up till 1967 in the Six-Day War, and then Israel regained control of Jerusalem since then. And so because for the rest of the world, when they gain control of an area, everybody else recognizes it as theirs, but for Israel, nearly 60 years later, it's still disputed. So, interestingly enough, Israel was actually ready to give up eastern Jerusalem to Palestine in 2000 as part of a two-state solution, which Yasser Arafat declined to even have all of Palestine with East Jerusalem as their capital. So, if anybody tells you that Palestinians want a two-state solution for peace, historically that's hard to maintain based on the decisions that the leaders have made of saying no thanks when the offer's been on the table. So with that, we're going to focus in on the Old City. With the Old City, you're going to see that it's divided up into 4 sections, and when you're walking around the Old City, you will I think pretty quickly get a sense of, yep, something has transitioned as we move into the next quadrant or the next quarter. This is starting with the Christian quarter. We'll be staying in the Christian quarter this time at the Christ Guest House. Right inside, you see the Jaffa Gate here, and then that Citadel. Right across the street from the Citadel is where we'll be staying when we're in Jerusalem. And so it's just about as prime of a location as you can be to have Jerusalem at your fingertips. Moving from the Christian quarter down, you have the Armenian quarter. This is the people group, the Armenians. We'll talk more about them in a moment, not the people of a theological persuasion. And then we move into the Jewish quarter, which we'll focus on first and most heavily. And then you have the largest quarter, which is the Muslim quarter. The whole thing in size is only about 1 mile by 1 mile. And so you can walk across and through very easily. It is a much better time to travel to the Old City of Jerusalem today than when Mark Twain and D.L. Moody did it in the 1800s, because now they have indoor plumbing and paved streets. Basically the the stones are still just as old, but the roads were just slosh pits of yuck. So this is a good time to be there. And the other thing that's going to be surprising is how many satellite dishes you're going to see. Because of the fact that everything is made of stone, they got to have lots of good antennas to try to get a reception anywhere in that place. So, and then about 36,000 people live there, most of them again living in the Muslim quarter. As we walk through the Jewish quarter, you're just going to see children just playing in the streets alone, and it might even freak you out because they're like young kids, like just playing by themselves, like 4 and 5-year-olds just running around like outside with no parental control. So it's a very interesting place. I mean, if you want to talk about a cultural exposure, just taking a lap around this place, we'll be like, oh, I just saw the whole world in this mile on mile spot. So let's get started with this. We'll come back to that map a couple times. The current city walls were constructed by Suleiman the Magnificent in 1593. So they are old walls, but these are not the walls that were there in Jesus' day, and that will be important when we talk about Jesus' burial and resurrection. By the way, Suleiman, guess who gave himself that nickname? Not his wife. Okay. All right. So Jewish quarter. So this section here, kind of grayed out there, that's a Jewish quarter. You see the Western Wall Plaza there. The Ophel or Davidson Archaeological Park is there. And then the way that you enter into, the way that non-Muslims enter into the Temple Mount is from the Western Wall Plaza. There are other sections to enter the Temple Mount for Muslims. And so, but if everything goes according to plan, we'll come up this direction here. All right, so let's take a look around. So first and foremost, the most prominent thing is the Temple Mount. There's nothing more prominent than this section here. The elevated platform in Jerusalem, where the first and second Jewish temples once stood, making it the most sacred site in Judaism and a central location in biblical history. Location of the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque today, currently. Technically, the entire Temple Mount area is considered a mosque. So this is one area that when we go there, modesty will be the entire arm covered for women, and then ankles covered as well for women. And then gentlemen, modesty for you as well. And if you're not modest, they've got these modesty skirts that they'll give you when they get up there. And they're not very flattering, okay? But we will try to take a picture of you if you have to wear one. So just because we care about sharing that. Because we that's fun. Okay. So now what's interesting is that prior to 1948, prior to the state of Israel, there was never really any second guessing that this is where the Jewish temple stood. It's only been since 1948 that we begin to have propaganda that there was never a Jewish temple there that existed whatsoever. In fact, there's even a 1924 Muslim travel guide that, in talking about the Dome of the Rock, says that it sits where the Jewish temple once stood. So you can see how much of a difference a state of Israel made in the agenda of propaganda taking place. And so here, the purpose of the Dome of the Rock, people think the Dome of the Rock is a mosque. It is not a mosque, it's a shrine or a memorial. And it stands there to commemorate Muhammad's night flight, where he was instructed by God of how many times to pray. Initially, Allah told him to pray a lot more than 5 times a day. And on his way back down from heaven on his magical horse, just quoting the Quran, Moses told him that it was way too much and that he needed to go back and haggle with Allah. And he got down to 5. So, great job. In the Quran, it just says distance, which is what the Al-Aqsa means the place of the distance and in the distance. And so there's nothing in the Quran that actually identifies Jerusalem. It just later became a place that Muslims identified as, oh, this must be the place that Muhammad was talking about, is where the night flight and the magical horse took place. So, that's the Dome of the Rock. We are not allowed to go inside. Since roughly 2001, non-Muslims have not been allowed inside. We can go up, we can kind of look at the outside, but we can't go inside the vicinity of the building, okay? Depending on where we're at in terms of time, at the end of the class, I'll look at just kind of a diagram of it from the inside. And then the Al-Aqsa Mosque, this is a true mosque, still functioning to this day. We'll walk past it, we will not go in it. There are other mosques that we could go in, but it's typically viewed as a more combative action for non-Muslims to go into it because of where it sits. Some people wonder who's in control of the Temple Mount with these two key components on there. It's actually the Jordanians who are in control of this. They are the ones responsible for the facilitation of the Temple Mount. And one of the things that's interesting is that because these two buildings are here, there's not a lot of archaeological digging that can take place there, which is kind of a problem, right? Because when we think about first and second temple standing there, it's probably a treasure trove of artifacts that could be discovered if people were allowed to dig there. Now, fortunately for us, there was a point in time at which the Muslims, without anyone's permission, began to dig in this corner here of the Temple Mount to dig a underground mosque that would be in the ground there. And they carelessly just dug into the ground, and then they threw all the dirt over the wall. So, for the last 25 years roughly now, there's been what's been called the Temple Sifting Project, where there's been groups of volunteers who's been going through that debris, carefully sifting through it, and finding things that were perished in that excavation. And lo and behold, guess what they find a lot of? Jewish coins from antiquity. But according to the United Nations Education Council, voted on in 2016, there is zero evidence of any Jewish presence historically in this area. Voted on strictly by Muslim countries. And that's how it passed. Fun stuff, right? Isn't this great? Yeah.
So why were there so many coins? Did people just go around dropping their coins on the ground?
Well, because you have markets established all around here with travelers who would purchase their animals to make the sacrifices there. If you're taking a blemished lamb halfway across the world, it's probably going to be blemished by the time you get to Jerusalem. And so then there are all these nice people outside with their markets ready to go, hey, pilgrim, I got your lamb right here for a low, low cost of $29.99 shekels. Now, at the base of the Temple Mount is where we find the Western Wall, sometimes referred to as the Wailing Wall. One of the misconceptions that's most common with this wall is that it was that it's a fragment, a remaining wall of the temple. It is not that. It is simply the retaining wall to the platform that the temple once stood on. So it's not the western wall of the temple, it's the western wall to the, is a retaining wall to where the temple once stood. The retaining wall is famous for these very large blocks from Herod the Great. So Herod the Great, as we talked a couple times ago, was an Idumean or an Edomite. He was always trying to make good with the Jewish people when he wasn't trying to kill them, you know. And so one of the things that he did was he did these building campaigns to try to please the Jews. He did it here, he did it in Hebron, and lo and behold, it was good enough that stands today. Now, what happened for Jewish people is that this is the closest thing that they have left of anything that is remnant of the temple, and so for them, this has become a place of prayer. And for you and I, we'll be able to go to the Western Wall Plaza, we'll be able to freely go up to the wall and to pray. Women have their designated side, men have their side. Men, you'll just need to have a hat on, or they'll have a kippah there for you to use to go up to the wall and to pray. There's also a place for ritual hand washing if you want to get real excited about the whole thing. But don't convert on me, okay? This scene here is taking place at a holiday, so you don't have to worry about it being that many crowded people. I know some of you may not be into Disney crowds. Don't worry, don't freak out. We won't have that, okay? It's not going to be jam-packed. And we'll probably go there once during the day, but we'll also go there at the evening when it's cooler, and I think it's a very enjoyable experience to tour that site in the evening, especially since we're in such close walking proximity to where we're staying.
So Jared,
Yes.
should we put our prayers like on a sticky notes, we can stick it in the wall?
You're certainly welcome to, yeah. And so what they do is that it's basically like sending a text message to God when you put your prayers into the wall. And what they do is that they will gather their prayers up at certain points, and then they take them up to the Mount of Olives and they burn the papers there as a way of kind of like a ceremonial thing to the Lord. So you're more than welcome to do that. This ramp is much more complete. It looks very different from when this photo was taken. And then you can see this is the men's side, the women's side. Sorry ladies, it is smaller. I didn't make the rules. And then there is a synagogue inside of here, men, and so we'll try to sneak in a look in there because there is one of the few spots in Jerusalem where there's a glass window or a grate looking down, and you can see how far down it was to the first century floor. Because Jerusalem, like many areas, is a tell. And Jerusalem has been conquered and torn down and built upon multiple times over the last 2,000 years. And so where we'll stand in Jerusalem is not the street level at which Jesus stood on when he walked there. And so that'll be a very fascinating experience. Any questions about the Temple Mount or the Western Wall before I move on?
Is that walkway, elevated walkway, is that just for observation, or can you,
This is how we'll access the Temple Mount.
okay.
Yeah, yeah, and actually what they've done now is they've pretty well enclosed it so that way they don't have people gawking at all. And then there's a few places that you'll see soldiers. This will be one of the spots that you'll see soldiers, just to make sure that there's nobody going up to the Temple Mount to be a provocateur, right? Nobody who's going up there to try to be a rabble rouser. And then also one of the things that's interesting is that this wall actually goes about another 400 yards or so behind these buildings. And there's actually one section in the Muslim quarter that we'll be able to go look at that's called the Mini Western Wall. And so it's a part of the same wall that's just a much smaller space. Prior to 1967, there was actually buildings that came all the way up here, and to get access to the wall was actually just a little alleyway. And when Jewish people found it, when they regained control of it in 1967, this entire Jewish quarter was pretty well decimated. And so what they've done since then is that this is the one area of the old city where they've done a lot of archaeological digging since 1967, because they thought, okay, well, there's nobody here, so let's see what's down there. And so that's why, and we'll see more in a moment, there was a lot of interesting things they found in terms of Hezekiah and so forth, but then also it'll look very new because it's all been rebuilt since then. Because of obviously the Jordanians were not concerned about taking good care of the Jewish quarter from 48 to 67. All right, Southern Steps. So another interesting site that we'll go to is called the Davidson Archaeological Park. And what they've uncovered there are the steps that were leading up to the Temple Mount in the time of Jesus, okay? So when we talk about, when you hear a phrase like Second Temple period, that simply means that we're referring to the time period where the Second Temple was in place, from like the time of Nehemiah and Ezra, when they rebuilt the temple, up until the time it was destroyed in 70 AD. And so, when we go throughout Israel, there's a lot of places that we can go, Jesus was here. This is one of the places where we can say Jesus stood here, because of its prominence in entering into the temple. And in addition to that, it's an interesting site because it is most likely the location where Acts 2 unfolds, where Peter preaches on Pentecost. And we'll see that in a moment why. So these are the southern steps. You'll be able to walk, and sometimes we talk too long, so you may even sit where Jesus walked. So, and then this is an interesting remnant of what's been found. This is a replica. The original one is in the Israel Museum, but this was at the corner of the Temple Mount where it was a trumpeting stone. And so on Rosh Hashanah, the Feast of Trumpets, when they would blow the trumpet, this was the area designated for that on the Temple Mount. And when the Romans came in 70 AD and sacked the temple and destroyed it, the stones were turned over, and this stone fell to the ground. And so as they did these archaeological digs, this is one of the stones that they uncovered with the inscription of it being the trumpeting stone, or the place of trumpeting. And so isn't that fascinating that this has no Jewish evidence whatsoever of them ever being here? It's written in Hebrew. It's just me. Sorry. Now,
Tell us, Jerry.
when
Do you feel strongly about
I mean,
that?
it's when people say crazy things, they go, it makes sense, right? And like, no, it doesn't make sense. And then someone else goes, oh, I think it does make sense. Like, no, now you're both crazy. So, the mikvah. All right, I talked a little bit about the mikvah before. The mikvah was for ritual washings. And so when Peter tells the crowd to repent and be baptized in Jerusalem, it's like, well, how do you baptize thousands of people right now? Well, it's because just outside the southern steps there, what we have found is over 50 mikvahs, and we continue to find mikvahs there. And so all of these places for ritual washings were, it makes sense that they would be there, because Jewish people would want to go through a cleansing process before they would go up to the Temple Mount. And so the further away you are from the temple to go through a ritual washing process in a baptismal, the more likely you are to become ceremonially unclean by the time you get to the temple. And so what do? You bring the mikvahs there. And so someplace, when we think about like we'll get there, but the pool of Bethesda, it's a source of water that could have funneled down past the Temple Mount and created clean channels of flowing water for people to be able to go through the ritual washing process, be ceremonially clean, and then they go up to the temple, worship, offering their sacrifices. And so when Peter says, repent and be baptized, he's not saying leave Jerusalem and go out to the Jordan. He's saying hop in the mikvahs because we're all ready for you. They're all right there. And so we'll see these at Chorazin, we'll see these at Qumran. This will be something that we'll see multiple times. Any questions about mikvahs? Great. Hezekiah's wall. I love this. This has actually been done up really nicely. One of the great things about the sites being so bare for the last 5 years is that they've been able to do a lot of improvements since they haven't had millions of tourists standing around. It's like trying to do construction at your house when you have guests over, you know, like you don't, right? You wait till the guests leave. So this has worked out really well for them. But when the Assyrians were trying to attack Jerusalem and Hezekiah was on the defensive end, it says that he extended the walls of the city of Jerusalem because essentially the suburbs of Jerusalem were unprotected. And we'll take a look at a photo later to kind of see how Jerusalem's geography has shaped and changed. But when digging down, they found where these walls were extended. And so here is an 8th century wall extended from Hezekiah, confirming the scriptures from when Sennacherib would have tried to attack Jerusalem unsuccessfully. And now the Cardo. Cardo is a Roman road, from Roman market road. We'll see a few different Cardos when we're there. Beit Shan is the largest one. This runs right through the Jewish quarters where we'll be able to access it. And on a Cardo here, you see these pillars here, and then you see how it kind of has that raised step there. So this would have been the pathway, and then over here would have been where the shops were. And so this was a staple in Roman cities throughout the Roman Empire. And what's fascinating about this one is that there's actually, they had no idea it even existed until in the 1970s, they had discovered a map showing that there was a 2nd century AD Cardo running through Jerusalem. And everybody went, no, there's not. And then they went digging for it, and they went, look, it's not there. This is what it looks like today with some modern shops in the area. Here's the Madaba map, okay? So it's a mosaic tile from about 6th century AD. It's in Greek, okay? So this is a map of Jerusalem, of the old city of Jerusalem. I'll point out more in a second so it makes more sense. And anybody know where they found that at?
The what?
The map. Anybody know where they found the map at?
You said Jordan.
Did I say it already? Oh, great. Someone's paying attention. Great. Yeah. They found it in Jordan. In the country of Jordan, they found a map of Jerusalem. Isn't that wild? It's actually a map of the whole Middle East, but this part is specifically of Jerusalem. Okay? And so what you have here is you have the Damascus Gate here. Okay? And then you have the Cardo running through. You have the Church of the Holy Sepulchre here. Okay, you have the white and the old city walls running around it, and then the Nia Church, which is no longer standing, but is just outside where the Zion Gate was. So, now, the temple was also to the north here. So, with the gates here and running, they assumed that the map was oriented what direction? North, right? Because that's how we orient our map. Wasn't, it was oriented east. And so once they turned the map, then they dug, they went, oh, there's the Cardo. It's there the whole time. We just read the map like we read maps. Burnt house. If we have time, we'll go into the burnt house. We don't usually have time, but it's an interesting place worth mentioning that I'm going to try to get into the itinerary this time. This is a 1st century home that they found discovered in the Jewish quarter when they were digging down. Now the reason that we know it's a priestly home is from Josephus' records of who the priestly line, who the priests were in Jerusalem, and they were actually crooked priests, but the names were inscribed on the stoneware and the measurements, the weights that were found in the home. I mean, so like the name of the family is inscribed on the artifacts found in the home, and matches Josephus' description of how this part of Jerusalem, the northern suburbs there, were burned during the Roman revolt, when the Romans were trying to destroy Jerusalem to put down the Jewish revolt at the same time that Jerusalem was destroyed. And so, again, I mean, you're not seeing a full house here, but you're seeing the partial walls, and you're seeing where they had seating, stoneware, ink wells, and the reason why it was consistent with being a priest of it being stone is that it was harder for stone to become unclean. It was more expensive, but it was less likely to be contaminated than like ceramic pottery that it could hold kind of the filth or uncleanness in it. Here's an example of some of the stoneware that they found. So really, I mean, in remarkable condition when you think about the fact that it was destroyed in a fire 2,000 years ago. Hurva Synagogue. This is very interesting. There's actually a giant menorah that stands outside of it right now. this is a synagogue that's been destroyed and rebuilt multiple times. The word Hurva actually means ruins, is what it means, ruins. It's the ruins synagogue. So it was destroyed in the 1800s and then rebuilt, and then destroyed again by the Jordanians and then rebuilt. The first time that I went to Israel in 2009, all they had was the arch of it. That's all they had. And they kept the arch up to go, we're going to rebuild it, as a statement of their perseverance and their resilience. Now, this was it in 2010, so just a year later they had completed the project. Now, they did something very interesting in the Jewish quarter. Does anybody notice what's up here in the corner there? A minaret. Yeah. There's a minaret, not operational, but a minaret nonetheless, in the Jewish quarter, still standing. And we want to take a guess at how many synagogues are standing in the Muslim quarter?
0.
0. Want to take a guess at how many synagogues are still standing in Muslim countries today? 0. It's a statement. We're willing to live in peace with you. That's why they leave it there. Like, don't forget, we didn't destroy your minaret. You might have destroyed our synagogue twice, but we didn't destroy your minaret. And that's why I love that picture. Jewish quarter has 2 primary gates for entering and exiting. You have the Zion gate and the Dung gate. The Zion gate, I really like it because it's just outside of it is the supposed tomb of King David, which I don't think is right at all, but that's just what it said. When Suleiman was going to have the walls built, he had made the plan for the walls to encompass the historical location of the, the traditional location of the tomb of David, because even Allah and Muhammad honors people like David and Jesus, just they're not, who the Bible says they are. And then basically the architects cut the city walls in such a direction as to avoid encapsulating that area. And so Suleiman had the architects killed and then had them buried outside Zion Gate so people could spit on their graves when they walked past it. That's intense, right? I mean, that's really, talk about yeah, I'm gonna stick it to you. So, the Dung Gate, not a flattering name, but the Dung Gate is positioned because just outside the Dung Gate is the Hinnom Valley, and the Hinnom Valley historically has been a trash dump for Jerusalem. And so the Dung Gate have that name as a place because people would walk through that gate to get rid of garbage. Also, the Hinnom Valley serves as a picture that Jesus uses when describing hell as well. So the Dung Gate. Now the Dung Gate has been widened for the use of cars to be able to get in and out because the Western Wall Plaza is right there. So it's one of the few gates that you can drive through. In fact, everybody, you can enter into the Jaffa Gate because that's been open. I'll talk about that more in a moment. And you can drive around the outside to the Dung Gate. But you can't drive anywhere in here. And then the St. Stephen's Gate, you can get really, really tiny cars and mopeds in there. But that's it. That's it. And here, they have these sweet pedestals that are automatic, and they will go down into the ground and then pop back up. Just don't be standing on it when it does it, okay? I told you once. That's it. All right, so let's go to the Christian quarter. keep in mind that when we say the term Christian Quarter, that what you're going to encounter there is not a bunch of evangelicals running around there, okay? It's Christendom is very broad, and a lot of it doesn't look like anything that we're often very familiar with. There's a lot of presence of orthodoxy there, in addition to Catholicism as well. And so, there are some people there, that's great, but don't be like, I'm in the Christian Quarter, I can trust all these people. No. No, no. Shopkeepers are shopkeepers, okay? We'll talk more about haggling with them later. All right, so one of the key things that we'll see there is the end of the Via Dolorosa is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre, I would hold to, is not only the traditional site, but also the most historical site for Jesus' crucifixion, burial, and resurrection. The problem is that it is maintained by a variety of groups, including Catholic, Greek Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox, and the Ethiopians showed up and they wanted a place, and they said, there's no room left for you. And they said, well, what about the roof? And they said, fine, you can have the roof. So there's an Ethiopian village on the roof, which we'll go walk through because it's kind of fun. Okay, so we'll go walking on the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Don't worry, it's going to be okay. Across the street from where we'll be at is David's Citadel. David's Citadel has nothing at all to do with David. It's just one of those things where they named it David's Citadel because it was Jerusalem. But it does hold components of Herod's palace, of Herod's towers. And so this is the proximity with which Herod was there. Typically, I don't take groups in there just because in terms of archaeological like wonders, it's not stunning. And there's not a lot of biblical connection that we can draw there in terms of there's no clear events that happened in Herod's palace, although there's some theory that perhaps some of Jesus' trial could have taken place there, but that's more speculation in my opinion. Christian Quarter has two primary gates. We have the Jaffa Gate and the New Gate. New Gate, anybody want to guess what New counts as a place that was built in the 1500s? It was opened up in the 1800s. That's the New Gate, okay? Just to, get a sense of it. Now what's interesting is that the Jaffa Gate is actually right here been opened up. And so when the German Chancellor Wilhelm Kaiser II came, he wasn't willing to get out of his car to go into the city, and so they took out part of the wall so he could drive in, and which has been super convenient for taxis now. But that'll be an area that we come in and out of. Notice that the wall comes in and then goes that way. It's shaped like an L. It was a strategic decision to shape the entrances, the gates that way, so that way if somebody was trying to attack, when they came into the area, it would cause them to clog in that bend, and so it would make it more difficult to make their way in to the city. And then also you'll see these openings up here, and so that was designed not so much for archers, but these areas for dumping hot liquids onto people. And then along the top, there's actually a rampart walk, and that's where archers and so forth could stand along the top of that building. So I mean, we're in a city, it's a functioning city, but very much a remnant of really an ancient way of life that you'll experience kind of day in and day out for a few days. The New Gate, designed just as a walking gate, but again, some e-bikes, mopeds, that kind of stuff will access the area there. You'll see people do things with cars that will blow your mind. You'll see Bulos, our bus driver, park that bus in a spot made for a minivan. I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, it's almost like you just took the bus and just pushed it into a spot. I mean, really incredible stuff. I'll talk more about the Church of the Holy Sepulchre when I get to the Garden Tomb in a moment. The Muslim Quarter. We may eat lunch in the Muslim Quarter. Most of the Via Dolorosa cuts through here. when you were talking about St. Stephen's Gate coming through to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Although, keep in mind that because Jerusalem is so much higher, none of these sites that they're like, this is definitely where this happened in the Bible, is probably the case, because most of Via Dolorosa are extra biblical and not pertaining to that. So we'll walk the route, but we're not gonna spend a lot of time taking you on a Catholic pilgrimage, because I don't care about that. And neither should you. But there's a cool spice market that we'll walk through there. Yeah, it's really impressive. Yeah. I don't care what they did with the top of it, but it's okay. One of the most kind of a bizarre market shop that we'll walk through, Via Dolorosa. The one thing that we will see is that is significant to the scriptures is the Pool of Bethesda, featured in John 5. What's very interesting about this is that for years before its discovery, this is one of those areas that people pointed to in the Gospels and said, clearly this is not an accurate representation of history, because the pool area is described as a 5-porch roof. And it's like, if you have a roof, you're only gonna have 4 pillars, you're not gonna have 5. But what they found is that with this, it was actually 2 pools, and so there was a spinel or a spine running down the middle, featuring that 5th one, that 5th area to hold up the roof there. And so it actually confirmed when they discovered it archaeologically, like, no, that's how accurate the Gospels are, is that even the architecture of this is specifically pointed out, and because it would have been unique for a double pool like that to exist, the Pool of Bethesda. So that's where the invalid thinks, they believe that an angel is stirring it, they get the first one there, they're gonna be healed, right? And then he tells the man to get up and walk. And then the Church of St. Anne, did anybody at Second Winders?
Yeah.
Okay, so Lewis mentioned singing Amazing Grace in the church. That's the church he was talking about, the Church of St. Anne. And so we'll have a chance there for John to serenade us. So,
Whoa, wow.
okay, bye.
Edelson.
Is that,
Ed'll sing too, there we go.
that's not where you intend to sing. You sang
Hey, did you sign up
in
for that?
Galilee, yeah.
Muslim Quarter has several gates. It has the Damascus Gate, which is very large market vendors, people selling street food out there. When you walk in, you can buy every single cell phone case in the world that you'd ever want, okay, that you don't need. Herod's Gate, it has nothing to do with Herod. I don't know, they don't know why they named it Herod. So what they like to call it Flower Gate. Because it's a nice word, that's all. They just like, oh, it's nice, and maybe people want to walk through it. And then you have St. Stephen's Gate, and so this is the traditional site where Stephen is martyred in Acts 7. He's taken outside the city walls of the geographical proximity of where that would have occurred. They also call it Lion's Gate because of these creatures up here. But they're actually not lions, because Suleiman's animal that represented him wasn't lions, it was leopards. But when people are standing on the street level looking up at this, they just think that they look like lions, but they're actually leopards. It should be Leopard's Gate, but nobody calls it that. So. And then there's one more gate that nobody
Yay.
walks through.
Because it's closed till Jesus comes.
So this is known as the Eastern Gate. Some people refer to it as the Golden Gate. Okay, so just to flip back, so this is right here. So this is Temple Mount. See that? And then here's the Golden Gate right here. Okay. So what sits opposite of the Golden Gate is the Mount of Olives, which we'll talk more about in a moment. So after they built this, Muslims started to learn about this prediction that Jesus, according to Zechariah 14, Acts 1, that Messiah, when he returns, will come to the place that he ascended, which was Mount of Olives. So he'll return to the Mount of Olives. That's what Zechariah 14 says. The Mount of Olives will be split in two, and he'll come in through the Eastern Gate and enter into the temple. So the Muslims heard about this and they thought, that's not going to happen. but just in case it does, we should probably close this gate. And then they thought, is that enough? Is it enough just to lock your doors? And they thought, probably not enough. So then what they did, you see these structures down here? They put a Muslim cemetery there. Because they said, if a holy man returns, he's not gonna walk across graves and defile himself. So he's not coming back. But just in case he does, we'll also put this cemetery here as kind of our barbed wire before you get to our front door, which we have locked up. I mean, for people who don't think it's gonna happen, it's a lot of protection, right? Now the Armenian quarter, this is the smallest quarter. Really, from an archaeological standpoint, historical standpoint, nothing that we'll really go look at and see. We'll probably walk through there, around there at some point, if it's more convenient. But usually just to kind of cut through on this street to get down to the Jewish quarter. And again, we're kind of like right on the cusp of the Christian quarter and Armenian quarter there with the hotel that we'll be staying in. So St. James, so the belief here is that St. James, both Jameses are buried there. There's no actual evidence of that. Fun fact for popular trivia, anybody know who like one of the most famous currently living Armenians family is in the world? Yes, that's right. The Kardashians. The Kardashians are Armenians. And Kim Kardashian, when she was married to Kanye West, had one of their children baptized at St. James Cathedral. Who would have thunk it, right? I mean, can't make this stuff up. Mount of Olives. So we'll take a bus ride up to the top of Mount of Olives. This is looking at the Mount of Olives. And so from the Mount of Olives, we'll be able to look back at Jerusalem. Here in the front of the picture, you can see the Muslim cemetery. Over here, you see the Jewish cemetery. This is a Russian Orthodox church that has the teardrops there. This is the Garden of Gethsemane and the Church of All Nations here. And then Domia Slavit there. One of the things I forgot to mention about the Dome of the Rock, the structure of it is not the structure of any other Islamic building. It's actually, if you notice, it had the kind of sides, 5 sides, and had that dome top, right? It's actually in the shape of a Byzantine church. And the Muslims intentionally made it that way as a statement against Christendom of their defeat and their superiority over them to build their memorial, their ceremonial spot of Muhammad's night flight in the design of a Byzantine church. So if you ever look at it and you're like, why does it look like this and not like this? Or why do all the Byzantine churches look like the Dome of the Rock? Well, Byzantine churches came first. So now with this ridge line, you also have, to the north you have Mount Scopus, and so, but really the whole ridge line can be referred to as Mount of Olives, more specifically that middle ridge. Again, the first time it's mentioned in Scripture is when David's fleeing from Jerusalem. We see it again in Zechariah 14 for the messianic prediction there. And then Bethany, where Jesus spends time, is on the kind of top, far side of the Mount of Olives, because when Jesus was often coming to Jerusalem, he'd come from the Jordan River Valley, come up over the Mount of Olives into Jerusalem. When Jesus makes his entrance on Palm Sunday, he's coming down on the Mount of Olives. And so once we're up there and we've looked around and surveyed the area of Jerusalem, we will make our own pilgrimage down the Mount of Olives, making a few stops along the way. If it's available, we'll go into the Tomb of the Prophets, which is a place where, I don't think there's any concrete evidence of any prophets being buried there, but certainly evidence of Christian worship taking place underground there. That's very old. We'll stop at Dominus Flavit, and then we'll see some ossuaries that have been discovered there. Those are the bone boxes that were only used for about a 100-year window of time from 30 BC to 70 AD. That would be where Jewish people were stored after they died and their flesh had decayed. Super exciting stuff, I know. And then we'll go into the Garden of Gethsemane. And then from there you'll be able to see the Church of All Nations, which is commemorating that spot. So let me talk about this for a second. So on the Mount of Olives is a gigantic Jewish cemetery. Gigantic, huge. Why would there be such a big Jewish cemetery on the Mount of Olives?
Cause that's where Jesus is gonna return.
Well, the Jews wouldn't care about that, but it's a good guess. Yeah, Bruce?
The resurrection, when Jesus returns, would be, those graves would be strategically placed at the time of the return of Christ.
That's right. So within Judaism is that the resurrection will occur here. So not like the resurrection will start here, like the whole resurrection when Messiah returns and it's split open, like all of the resurrection is gonna happen there. Like, you know how like banks with the little tube and you put your check in there, you put it on a tube and it goes whoop, 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 like that? It's gonna be like that for every person buried across the world, just shooting through the earth, whoop, and then boop, right there at the Mount of Olives, right? Super fast, and then pop up there. But if you're buried here, front row seats, no line,
No two.
no tube, just pop up, right there, easy peasy. So this is like premier resurrection seating, right here.
So why did they think that?
From Zechariah, yeah, yeah. So, one of the things that's also interesting is that as we go, and we can kind of, sometimes that gate's open so we can get in, you'll see that they don't have any flowers on the tombs like we would have here, because it's the Middle East. Yeah, so if you have flowers out in the Middle East sun, how long do those last?
Very long.
Yeah, 30 seconds later. So what people do when they're traveling there is they'll bring the rocks from where they're coming, little pebbles, and they'll scatter those across the top as a memorial. So again, we'll make our way down this road here.
Did people take other people's rocks and put them on their parents' grave?
Not that I know of, but they did have these very nice areas in the tombs for lighting candles. But they used copper for those, and those have all been pretty much stripped out and stolen because if people are willing to steal it out of the air conditioning unit, they'll do it out of a Jewish tomb, so. Growing Gethsemane, here's some olive trees there. If someone tells you that they saw olive trees that have been there since Jesus was there, they got bad information, okay? But these olive trees are about 1,000 years old. And so they do live an extraordinarily long time, and they're one of the few trees that even existed in Israel prior to 1948, because the olive trees, if you recall, when the Ottoman Empire was in control, they imposed a tree tax on the land. And so people just chopped down all the trees instead of paying a tree tax. Kind of like when you go visit houses in the 1800s and none of them have closets, because closets were taxed as rooms in the 1800s. So you would just get wardrobes, right? And just go tour the Belvedere Mansion or something in Galena if you need a date night. Okay, you'll see what I'm talking about, or Grant's home. And so the same thing, you got rid of the trees, because why pay taxes if you don't have to, right? I mean, some things are just human, right? This does not change. But olive trees, they made enough money to justify paying the tax on it. So with a lot of trees, it's like, it's cheaper to get rid of it. For these trees were producing. Okay, City of David. Here's a model of the City of David because it's kind of hard to get an aerial shot to appreciate it. When we read about the Jerusalem in the Old Testament, this is really in a land peninsula south of the Dung Gate. So what I mean by a land peninsula is the land kind of juts out and the valley runs on each side of it. The Kidron Valley is running here. And so what they've discovered as they've been digging here is David's palace, or the remnants of palace, and Solomon's palace. And then from Solomon's time, he built the temple just north of the main city of Jerusalem. But when David took control of Jebus, this is the area that he would have taken control of, and then built his city here. When we go into the city of David, this is where we'll access Hezekiah's tunnel, which will be the way that we get to the pool of Siloam. It'll be very hard to tell that this is a land peninsula just walking from the old city to there, but when we're on the Mount of Olives overlooking, you'll kind of be able to see how it stands apart from the rest of the geography there. When it comes to finding, anybody go, people went to Oriental Institute? Okay, a couple of you have been. So when we have like bulas, like the little stamps that have like people's names and stuff on it, a lot of those have been found digging in the city of David, which would be like an identification marker, like finding someone's social security card in the archaeological findings here at the city of David. So very, very key, important site that continues to get a lot of archaeological work in that area. Hezekiah's tunnel. I mean, anybody claustrophobic? Anybody concerned about this?
I'm claustrophobic, but it was great.
It was great, yeah. So Brian Bill wasn't able to do it, okay? But we haven't had too many people not be able to do it, right?
Right.
Yeah, so this is great. So what happens in the time of Hezekiah when Sennacherib is attacking Jerusalem is that the spring that is the water source for Jerusalem sits outside the city walls, and so they want to be able to protect their water source, because when you're sieging a city, one of the things you do is you cut off the water, and that way it will force them to surrender sooner. And so they realized that they had to get that water into the city without it being obstructed by the Assyrians. And so Hezekiah ordered this process where from inside of the city and from the spring, they began to dig underground through bedrock, pre-dynamite, right? Just with hand tools to meet up, and so that way they could continue to have a flow of water that was uninterrupted and inaccessible from the Assyrians, so that way they could maintain however long the siege lasts. So, archaeologist by the name of Warren discovered this by digging through a shaft at the city of David, and there's even an inscription near the entrance commemorating that spot, which has been carved off and is in the Israel Museum now. And so, good evidence that this is the very water tunnel that was being described in biblical times. It's just a single sentence found in 2 Kings 20 and 2 Chronicles 32, but again, it's clear history, clear evidence of the history of the Bible being true. So we'll have a chance to put on some headlamps, and we'll go walking through there. The water will be about mid-thigh and to about mid-calf, kind of varying degrees as we go through there. And so that's why water shoes are a requirement. It is not a very long process. It'll take us maybe 10 minutes or so to walk through it, and we will just have a great time. If you want, we can all stop in the middle, turn off our lamps, and sing a song together. If you want to do that. John?
In the dark.
Now, there's
Because he
one,
can't sing.
there's one spot where it's a little bit off. It's called the false turn, okay? Now think about this. These guys dug without any like instruments from opposite ends, and the most that they missed each other was a slight little indent of a turn. That's it. Now, when we start, the ceiling will be a little bit lower, you kind of be a little bit hunched over, but by the time we get to the end, it'll be about 16 feet tall. So those starting from the spring had to dig much further down, versus those who were in the city, they started smaller to get there, and then it kind of opens up. All right? And then at the end of it, we'll come to the Pool of Siloam. A large pool at the southern end of the city of David. The healing in John 9 takes place here. Now, what's really fascinating about the Pool of Siloam, if you go to like Bible dictionaries from the 1900s, sounds like a long time ago when you say it like that, right? 20th century. Yesterday. And you would look up the Pool of Siloam, this is the picture you would see. And everybody's going, wait, the miracle of the healing of the pool happened there? That's nothing. Like, what is that even? So everybody was calling this the Pool of Siloam, even though everybody kind of knew like this was a Byzantine pool and not a first century pool. And so then what they discovered was, aha, they found the actual pool. And so for years, all they could do was sit on these steps and look at this wall. Now the way that this was uncovered was by an archaeologist named Eli Shukron. He gets all of the credit for discovering, but the way that he discovered is that they were actually doing road work in the area. And as they were doing road work in the area, he heard this like scoop kind of drag as it went through, and by the sound that the machine made, he went, hey, stop, you're not digging through ground, you're hitting stone. Which, I don't think I could have done that. So they stop it, and what they discover is, this was the Pool of Siloam. That's how they discover it, doing road work. This is why road work takes so long in Israel, because every time you stick your shovel in the ground, you find something ancient. Okay? But then what happened was that they couldn't go any further, so you just kind of like had these steps, but no pool. And it's like, okay, thanks, Jared, for taking me through a water tunnel on my vacation to look at a wall of trees and tell me that this is a pool. So Israel was able to acquire the land through eminent domain from the church on the other side of this, and then they've been digging it out for the last couple of years. And what they discovered was, I put a picture there. What's wrong with me? Oh. Okay, you just have to see it when we get there. Yeah.
It's awesome.
But you'll be able to see the rest of the pool. All right, garden tomb. So if we go up to outside of the Damascus Gate, we'll walk up through there, and we'll come to what many consider to be the place where Jesus was crucified and buried. Okay. This place is great. It's great. Let me give you a 10-minute break, and I'll tell you about the garden tomb in a minute. Sound good? Okay. I tried to stop at 4 o'clock, but I got so excited that it went past. So I won't let that happen on the tour, I promise. All right. 10 minutes, we'll come back and we'll finish.